turn this over to my grandson.
Be careful sitting down, Graham. My name is Marvin, and I speak Spanish very well, but apparently only for 10 days at a time, 5 years apart. I did take 3 years of Spanish in high school here at River Valley. I didn't use it until our first trip, and then all of a sudden it came back, and I didn't use it very much again until this time, which kind of adds a different layer for me, I think, than the rest of my team. But also, like I said, it's been 5 years, so I personally had changed within that 5 years. I believe matured, we'll put that, although I do still enjoy immature moments, as my team could say. For example, I would say I'm the epitome of youth and physical fitness on our team. And no one can argue with that. They could try, but they're not going to get very far. But those are the types of interactions we've had. My experience was a lot different this time than it was last time, and I think my role and purpose was different this time than it was last time. I'll touch on, I know I had a certain amount of order I was going to do these in, but I'm going to switch it up a little bit. And I also noticed that on our agenda it said 3 to 4 minutes for me. Yeah, okay. Sure. The first thing I want to touch on is people versus projects. The last time I was very excited about the projects, more excited about the projects last time than I was this time, because near the end of my trip last time, I really started to use the Spanish very well, and I really started to see these people at a different layer I had than I first arrived last time. I still enjoyed doing the projects, but I went with the awareness this time that the projects are merely a vessel for us to interact with people. And that really changed the dynamic for me going in, because I had kept a relationship with Herman and Berta and their family and Jairo and all my friends from last time. So there really wasn't a moment where I missed a beat. I showed up, we hugged like we were family, we talked about how we missed each other. They asked questions about Eli and Liz, and I asked questions about their family, and before too long we were in rhythm again like we hadn't missed a beat. I had already kind of had an understanding, as I said, about the projects, but something changed this time too, where I was able to look at it from the lens of Jeff Sprecher and the purpose of the projects and what they provided beyond just the fuel efficiency of the stove, beyond just the ability for somebody who needs a wheelchair to be able to get around. There was a lot more that went into it, and my mind kind of started to work in that direction. So I started to ask questions in Spanish, deep questions. And I think it became normalized that they figured, well, if Marvin's asking these deep questions, and I was asking questions about their personal lives, about mission impact, about all these things, that they said, well, then we can talk to Marvin about this and he can relay it to everybody else, which was a fantastic idea until it got serious, right? That's where I lead into the interactions. And I'll talk about how those got serious. You'll see this little lady here in the picture behind us. She's standing in front of some rabbits. And I asked if I could see those rabbits, and what do you think she told me? Yeah. That's like trying to take a PlayStation or Xbox controller away from that kid over there. Like, it's not happening. I was able to speak to her in Spanish, and I had been able to speak to everybody in Spanish. And there's so many pictures. I could have picked so many, but I just love her face on that. She's serious, and she means business. Because even though they're for food, she wasn't going to let us eat them. But that's a surface-level conversation, right? And I had a lot of those, and we had a lot of those, and they're fantastic, and they're fun. And the people of Guatemala, they use a lot of humor. And I started asking, man, why do they use so much humor? So then I would ask questions. I come to find out that a lot of things that they deal with, similar in our lives, we use humor, right? As anyone can attest if they're around me very much, to deal with a lot of the strife and struggle and stuff that's on your brain. We try to keep that surface light so that it's not dark all the time. These are the types of things I seen and struggled with while we were there this time. And as I said, I would ask questions about this. And even though when we get there to Guatemala the first time, I don't know why, but you go with an impression of, because they don't have so much, maybe they don't know as much as we are. We're just all knowledgeable and experienced. Come to find out, especially this time, you get asking some serious questions about life, and you come to find out either they know the same or sometimes they know more. And we had some conversations where it would be our group meeting, and Herman or others would meet with us, and by that time, Katie and the other translators have left, and guess who's left to be the lightning rod between these two? It's kind of normal somewhat, as the ladies were pointing out, to the fact that the ladies would open up to them about personal things like it was nothing. That's part of everybody's everyday life there. So they kind of have normalized talking to each other about it. I'm pretty sensitive in that regard, and thank goodness Herman was the only one that really tried to get me to portray like what they deal with and what they go through. But I had a rough time hearing what he was saying and knowing that that was going to have to come out of my mouth to people that I've come to not only appreciate, but that have heard personal things about me and things I shared with. It got rough. And then, while we were in the midst of it, after I unloaded everything that Herman talked about, appreciation and things they struggle with and all these things, I was bawling. I knew that my team wanted me to relay something back to Herman, right? And I just was like, well, we're already this deep. Let's go ahead and let her rip. And we did. And I have to say that hour, 2 hours, however long we were there, I think I got lost in time, that was probably the deepest connection I've had with people in one setting, in one moment in my entire life. And I came to a lot of realizations, right? There's interactions, those surface ones, which are fantastic and we have fun with and we did the first time. And then there's patience that comes along with these interactions where they go at a slower pace than we do. Like, we can attest to that. We had 2 stoves and thought, man, we're going to be done by 10. Let's get out of here. And here we were, afternoon, sun going down, we're trying to get out. They sit around, they talk a lot. They take their time with all this stuff and have patience. And these interactions, they need patience for that. And especially if you're going to dive deep in some way, shape, form, or fashion, if you're going to use Spanish for sure. If you're going to talk about deep things, you have to exercise patience a lot, which is hard for us here. I'm proud to say I didn't answer one email for 10 days, so there we go. We got some patience out of that thing. It wasn't great when I got back, but I did it. And the reason that I kept going in that direction is because of the similarities that I noticed between these people and us. While we're here somewhat praying for them to find all these things and have all these things that we think would make their life better, they're saying prayers for us to find all these things that we are missing that they think would make our lives better. What a crazy revelation for a very young man like myself to find on this journey, right? Here's some of the things that make us a lot of the same. We have a lot of the same wants, and by wants, I don't necessarily mean materialistic things. I mean the peace of mind things. We have a lot of those same wants. They want the same thing we want when it comes to that regard. A lot of the things that we really love, obviously not materialistic things, they love. They love spending time with their families, same way as we do. They love feeling connected to somebody in some way, shape, form, or fashion. They love joking. Like some of the times, like, I'm not going to say I was happy Julie was away, but I was able to at least say some things I wouldn't feel like I was like, oh, I can't believe I just said that, and Julie's standing right next to me. So they do that type of stuff as well, right? Having Spanish, I was able to overhear these things, and there's guys building construction while we're in there doing whatever, and nothing like wildly crazy, but just jokes that guys would make to other guys, or giving each other grief over whatever, however, whatever. So that's fun for that. But the other thing is the problems that we have, they have. And the problems that they have are what we have. The only thing I think that I've come to find out that separates us is the opportunities that we have here versus the opportunities that they have there, if we're talking about living a more affluent lifestyle, I guess, but we are very scarce on opportunities here to have what they have there. And I think that the interactions that we have and the experiences that we have by being able to do something like this is one of those things that forces that maturity, right? That gets you out of making fun of John for being my grandpa and how youthful I am and all these things. Although those are fun, it really creates a serious note in your life to look at your life introspectively as well. How can some of these things that burden me so bad here be so light when I'm there, right? Like the things that you see real struggle makes the struggles here not even insignificant. And the things that you hold on to here are ridiculous when you're there because here they're insignificant. So that is a real blessing. One thing I will say in closing is that the blessing to be able to speak Spanish is fantastic when you're there. Similar to when I was immature, as I am very mature now, I sometimes wish that I could go back to being that immature level because of the responsibility I have to take now knowing, right, about whatever I'm enlightened about. It's kind of that same way because being able to speak Spanish and dive in and be really weaved this time made it incredibly hard for me to leave. I had developed deep relationships with these people there. I treat Berta like she's my mother. Same way as I would be very scared to say some things around Julie, I made sure to definitely not say them around Berta. And when people would try to tell on me, I would scream no as loud as I could that they weren't allowed to tell her these things. And that's because of the respect that I started to have for these people, understanding their lives and what they've been through, how much respect they demand from the community for what they do as well. It made it incredibly hard to leave this time. Leaving Guatemala was probably one of the hardest things I have ever had to do this time. It makes me nervous about going back next time because if I didn't want to leave this time, I can't imagine wanting to leave next time. And I remember one night we were talking about Julie having COVID, and I think I was talking with Gretchen and John, and they were like, oh man, it's awful. I said, just so you guys know, if that happens to me, don't even bother knocking on the door. I won't be in the room. I'll leave and just wander the village and wander everywhere. And I'll come back maybe when it's time for the flight to leave. Hopefully I'm cured by that. Because of the love I have and the interaction I was able to have. So if I could give any advice to anybody who plans on going and seeing a beautifully stubborn little girl like this one, it would be to do your best to try to be able to interact with them the best you can through Spanish, even though that sometimes it's poor, it still is very well. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to open up, as Amy kind of pointed out. They're ministering to us too, as much as we're ministering to them, even though they're inadvertently doing it. If you keep your eyes wide open while you're there and your mind open, you can learn a lot. So I'll let Gretchen go now.